Okay, welcome to the Gut Club's third installment of our podcast. And we have a very special guest today, Dr. Vivek Lal, who's with the University of Alabama at Birmingham and an expert in neonatology with a lot of focus on lung health. So what could be more important these days in the age of COVID-19 than the gut-lung axis? In fact, we're going to be learning about the gut-lung axis with Dr. Lal. Dr. Lal, welcome. Before I read your bio so people know who I'm speaking with, I want to thank you so much. I'm really honored that you've joined us today.
Thank you so much, Keith, for the invitation, and I'm honored to be here on your podcast.
Fantastic. I want everyone to know that we got very lucky crossing paths with you. You actually caught me posting your work on our Facebook page. That was quite an honor. You got a couple of hearts there in response because fantastic. I mean, I had a hunch that there could be something like direct application of probiotics to the lungs related to not just COVID-19, but so many other lung maladies. We can talk about several of them, but lo and behold, I was able to find your research. And are you the first in the world that has developed a product that is basically aerosolized or nebulized probiotics directly applied to the lungs?
Well, as far as we know, again, there are some other groups working on inhalation of bacteria. Again, we call them live biotherapeutics rather than probiotics for the lungs.
Yeah.
There are a couple of groups now working on it. As far as we know, we are the first ones, but we could be wrong. There could be someone. I never say no.
Yeah.
Which is a good thing to happen. We want people to realize the potential of bacteria for the lungs, and more people get involved in it. We actually would be happy.
Yeah, and your focus is Lactobacillus in this application. What made you choose Lactobacillus?
So that's a great question. As you mentioned, I'm a neonatologist, and we started studying the lungs of infants as soon as they're born. And we started studying whether there is actually a presence of a bacteria right after birth, and found that even after birth, there was an expression of bacterial DNA in the lungs, in neonatal lungs. Not only the presence of bacteria, but also this bacterial presence predicted the development of chronic lung disease in infants when exposed to noxious stimuli, especially in premature.
Yeah.
So then we started isolating these bacteria from these infants who actually got the disease, and found a huge preponderance of proteobacteria in the ones who got the disease, and there was decrease in lactobacilli who got the disease. Okay, so in a way, lactobacilli was protected. Then for the next few years, we started creating several in vitro and in vivo experiments where we tested different kind of lactobacilli, okay, which were isolated from these humans in different modes, in different ratios, in different combinations, or individually, to see which were most anti-inflammatory, looking at all the inflammatory pathways of lung diseases.
Yeah.
Okay. Next step was we took those findings and went to the animal models, the mice models. We created germ-free mice models with monocolonization of these bacteria or polycolonization. We even created some humanized mice models where we transplanted the microbiome from the lungs of humans into mice lungs of mice which did not have any germs, right? Germ-free mice, and found that just by merely transplanting that bacteria from a deceased human into a mice, we could create the disease. Similarly, when we transplanted bacteria, the good bacteria, from non-deceased, we were able to ameliorate the disease. So that's where the lactobacilli story came from. It's, I'm just summarizing this in 5 minutes. This is a 10-year work.
Well, that's fascinating because I used to say, and I still do, that Bifidobacteria is the Rolls Royce of the microbiome, but I've recently added that if Bifidobacteria are the Rolls Royce, Lactobacilli are the Lamborghinis. And we are promoting making your own kefir using traditional kefir grains. In fact, we produce and market our own special Ketosana advanced kefir grains. And we're promoting anaerobic fermentation such that in 48 hours, it becomes Lactobacillus dominant. So the more I learn about Lactobacillus, the more impressed I am. And in fact, when I learned that your product idea is focusing on Lactobacillus, I was amazed because I didn't realize at the time that Lactobacillus are also crucial for lung health.
And again, we looked at other bacteria also, but these were the most prominent. And Bifidobacteria, as you rightly said, is extremely important. But then we started studying which component of these lactobacilli are important. We started studying the cell wall. We started studying the teichoic acid. We started studying the metabolites that these bacteria produce. So, again, I can't tell you everything right now, but we have drilled it down to what component of these bacteria actually are the active metabolites which are creating the anti-inflammatory effect.
Fantastic. Okay, before we get into a discussion of the gut-lung axis, I want people to know who we're speaking with. When you say we, people need to know who you are. And you wear more than one hat. I mean, I do see that you're the director of the small baby program at the University of Alabama, the Golden Week Small Baby Program. But let me go ahead and read a brief paragraph about Dr. Lal. He's a physician, scientist, entrepreneur with over 20 years of experience in lung research, clinical management, and healthcare entrepreneurship. He completed his clinical and research training at the University of Texas at Southwestern Medical Center in Dallas and serves as the director of the Pulmonary Microbiome Lab at the University of Alabama at Birmingham, which is funded by the NIH and the American Heart Association. A neonatal intensivist and pulmonary biologist by training, he's authored over 100 original scientific publications, chapters, and abstracts, including groundbreaking articles on the critical role of the microbiome in chronic lung diseases. Prior to his current role leading ResBiotic, we'll talk about ResBiotic later, he founded Urgent Care for Children, the leading pediatric urgent care provider in the Southeast. So as someone who has been tracking the gut-lung axis, and now I refer to it as the microbiota gut-liver-lung axis, which we'll talk briefly about in a moment. I take these issues personally, Dr. Lal, because I'll tell you, my own mom passed from asthma at a young age. So ever since I began studying microbiome science, I've kept this in mind. That was the beginning of 2009 when I started learning about these issues. I'm not sure if gut-lung axis was, it was on the map actually. There are some early papers actually with Lactobacillus. I can share a screen toward the end of our talk, but most people don't know about the gut-lung axis. I mean, it takes a little bit of thought to even consider this. I mean, here we are 2 years, plus into a pandemic. And, if we're going to learn anything from this pandemic, wouldn't it be microbial regulation of immune response and viral bacterial interaction? I mean, if we don't start to learn these lessons, we'll be missing out on the lessons of the pandemic. But what you're offering the world is a window into both prevention and treatment of COVID-19, but also, I mean, there's so many issues. Pneumonia, your work applies to asthma, COPD, pulmonary fibrosis. A dear friend of mine passed from this locally at the age of 78. Tuberculosis, cystic fibrosis. What am I missing, Dr. Lal? I mean, there's so many.
Yeah, so there are many lung diseases. We are with ResBiotic and Alveolus Bio, which is a drug development company. We are looking at several lung disease programs. University of Alabama at Birmingham has been a pioneer and a powerhouse of lung research. We are continuously one of the top funded NIH centers for lung research. So a lot of technology does come out of here. A lot of NIH funding on various disease aspects. The interesting part is the microbiome science is so generalizable to many of these lung diseases. We are targeting lung diseases with predominantly neutrophilic inflammation, like COPD, cystic fibrosis. We are targeting pulmonary fibrosis, but from a different pathway aspect. We are looking at viral diseases like flu and COVID from the drug development companies aspect. From the supplement part, again, I'm not here to make any claims on what our supplement ResBiotic treats or can prevent, because we cannot, as you know. So we have created a supplement for lung support. Anyone who wants to breathe better, may it be a deceased person or a healthy person.
Yeah, that's fantastic, because there's so many people, say with asthma, and so many children and adults both with suffering asthma, that when you mention that they need to work on their gut, they look at you and roll their eyes more than half the time. They don't have a clue that asthma may be of gut origin. And there's quite a lot of science. I've been compiling this on the Gut Club pages. We have the Gut Club stool test discussion group, which is a private group. We've got about 9,000 people now on Facebook posting their charts, their stool test results. And what we're doing is interpreting those charts based on what, in my view, should be, in light of what a healthy microbiome looks like. I'm still trying to grasp what a healthy microbial balance looks like in the lungs. Probably science is as well, but I've just begun to dig into that. Many of the same, phyla are in the lungs as they are in the gut. And there are these amazing connections between the gut and the lungs. At first, I was thinking of it by way of the liver, the gut to liver to lungs route for many years, studying tuberculosis and thinking it's not just about sneezing. It's also about poor sanitation and intestinal origin of TB. But more recently, I've been learning about the lymphatic system, and that seems to be a greater impact when it comes to this route between the gut and the lungs, in particular the mesenteric lymphatics. Do you take this kind of thing into account when you're studying these things? Because I feel like such a beginner just learning about this gut-lung axis. Oops, you're frozen. I didn't. Oh, I think you. Uh-oh. Oh, you're back. You're back. Dr. Lal? Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
I was rambling. Okay. No problem. I was rambling. I was talking about the lymphatic system, the mesenteric lymphatics, and how they are connecting the gut and liver to the lungs. In fact, let's talk a little bit about the gut-lung axis, and then I'm going to let you take over and give a presentation about your work. But let me share a screen, two screens briefly. Here we go. This photo is 2020 from Florida in Tampa, and it's showing the connection basically from the gut to the lymphatic system, where the thoracic duct then combines with blood circulation. I believe it's the right subclavian vein. And a very large percentage of the lymphatic fluid is not just the gut, but this photo is missing the liver. I think it's something like 30% of the lymphatic fluid is actually originating in the liver that then connects with the thoracic duct. So, you know, and then I found a very wonderful old anatomical drawing that is about the connection between the gut and lungs. This is, I just couldn't help myself but to show this, this connection. But you know, you can see the system actually, and this drawing does include the liver. So, you know, this gut-lung axis and microbial regulation of immune response is so important with regard to COVID-19 these days, that if people want to prevent, you know, a dysregulated immune response, the idea is to focus on microbial balance, in my understanding. And I love the fact that you are such an expert in pediatrics. Also, I was in the 1980s a UNICEF spokesperson and have been really interested in child health since then. And this is a large part of the Gut Club, actually, and our microbiome vaccine safety project, which is all about microbial predisposition to an adverse vaccine reaction. But regarding preterm birth, this is a big issue because, in my understanding, the gut microbiota assembly is kind of etched in stone. There's a set order for things. And so when an infant is born prematurely, there are high levels of proteobacteria, I think, naturally. So this can predispose an infant to lung issues as well as adverse vaccine reaction. But why don't I hand over the floor to you? I think I'm rambling here. Dr. Lal, why don't you give us your presentation? Go ahead and screen share with us, and let's talk about your two companies, ResBiotic and Alveolus.
Yeah, so Keith, I think it's a good segue into the gut-lung axis. Let me see if I can share this here. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
And you see one screen?
Yes, looks
okay.
good. Mm-hmm.
So ResBiotic is our probiotic supplement company,
Mm-hmm.
which was, the idea was seeded from seeing what is out there in the world right now. Most of the shelves which are selling probiotic are not selling science-backed probiotics. So that was a concern we had. So we wanted to create something which was science-backed and which was the first to target the gut-lung axis, in addition to providing support to the immune system and the digestive system. Mm-hmm. So we created ResBiotic. Res meaning respiratory, or res meaning restoration. Okay. Mm-hmm. So as you know, probiotics are not just for gut anymore. There's a gut-brain axis, which is evolving faster than we can think. There are several people working on the gut-brain axis. There's a gut-skin axis. There's the gut eye axis people are working on.
And Dr. Lal, now there's a lung-brain axis, as just published.
The lung-brain axis.
Yes.
We were pretty impressed seeing the publication from Germany about the gut-brain axis, where your lung-brain axis, where the lung microbiota modulates your immune response in the brain. Mm-hmm. We were not surprised, but we were absolutely glad to see that someone else is looking at it. So talking about the gut-lung axis, there is constant communication going on between our gut and the lung. So as Keith mentioned, we know that the gut is connected to the lungs from the blood circulation. And more recently, we have understood that the lymphatic circulation also connects the gut to the lung. The bacteria in the gut, we are nothing but a bunch of bacteria. We have 10 times more more number of bacterial cells in the body than human cells, right? So how does this bacteria in the gut, and gut is the most immune responsive organ of the body. So how does this gut bacteria communicate with the lung? It is through the metabolites these bacteria produce in the gut, which go into the blood and then travel to the lungs. This is through the dregs. That is the immune cells and immune metabolites which go into the lymphatics and travel to the lungs. And directly, it could be through the direct seeding of the lungs by microaspirations. So every minute, we are microaspirating, which we don't realize. The small amount of macroaspiration, more so in pediatric than in adults, but it happens all the time. So there could be direct seeding of the lungs also, in addition to the circulatory channels. So that is the gut-lung axis. So in short, changing the gut milieu can affect the lungs. And we have shown over the last several years that reducing or increasing the gut lactobacilli, specific lactobacilli, population does decrease the inflammatory markers in the blood and in the lungs.
Yeah.
So we created ResBiotic based on that fundamental. Keith, go on. You had a question.
Well, I just wanted to break in and talk a moment about COVID-19. I mean, what you're talking about here is so, profound when it comes to prevention of COVID-19. If people understood this gut-lung axis, and this could explain what I would call a microbial predisposition to severe COVID. And in fact, there are probably, I remember when there were less than 100 papers published about the microbiome and COVID-19 it took a while for papers to build up. There are probably a few hundred at least now. But taking into account the gut-lung axis can explain so much, and for both treatment and prevention of COVID-19.
Keith, I would have to say here that I've been instructed by our attorneys to absolutely not talk about any disease process regarding ResBiotic.
Yeah.
Point taken, there could be, a role in COVID or other lung diseases, but ResBiotic is strictly a supplement company which supports lung health indirectly through the gut-lung axis.
Of course, please continue.
Yes. So we developed ResBiotic as a combination of gut-lung protective bacteria along with some gut-lung or antioxidant herbals, which again was a scientific discovery that we made. We started combining some botanicals which have high antioxidant potential and have been published in the lung field with these bacteria, first to see if they're being inhibited by these bacteria. And we found that no, there was no inhibitory effect. And later we found there is actually synergistic effect. So as you see, we have like 3 bacteria, Lactobacillus plantarum, RSB11, Acidophilus, and rhamnosus in a specific combination, which is called resB blend 1, and then some bioactive botanicals. There's several preclinical studies and clinical studies on these. And as I was mentioning, the dysbiosis leads to an increase in neutrophilic inflammation, and resB decreases the neutrophilic inflammation by decreasing MMP9 and ACPGP, which are markers of neutrophilic inflammation. MMP9 is a protease, that is metalloproteinase 9, which breaks down collagen and increases neutrophilic inflammation by increasing ACPGP.
That's really interesting. We have a photo exploration on our Facebook page about neutrophils and regulated by microbiota, things like neutrophil activity and infiltration. So I'm not surprised to see you including that.
Yeah, and so we have looked at this cascade or this mechanism, and we have published this. Our chief medical officer's lab has, Dr. Gugger's lab and my lab have published these findings in major journals like Nature, Science, etc. How MMP9 and ACPGP regulate chronic neutrophilic inflammation and chronic lung diseases. And now how microbiota regulates this whole cascade right up, at the top.
Fantastic.
These are some, I won't go into the details of the data, but here are some, actual hard data showing that resB blend reverses MMP9 cascade in vitro dysbiosis model of lung epithelial cells. We have same results in gut epithelial cells. Okay, and these herbal extracts do not impact the colonization of these bacteria, and that's how the stability of these bacteria are maintained. So, so MMP9 levels in vitro dysbiosis model are decreased by these strains and these bacteria, and the herbal extracts add a synergistic effect to these bacteria.
And I see you're focusing quite a lot on E. coli, which is of course an LPS producer that that might be naturally high in a preterm infant based on gut microbiota assembly.
That's a great point. So in all our human studies, so our approach was going from the bedside to the bench and then again to the bedside. So when we started studying this in 2013-14, we looked at humans and found that deceased humans had increased proteobacteria, mostly E. coli and Klebsiella. Okay, and so that's why in all our animal and in vitro models, we used E. coli as a model proteobacteria to cause the disease, and then you treat it with formulation.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was just going to mention there's also some focus in celiac disease on Pseudomonas, which is a proteobacteria.
Which is also a proteobacteria, yes.
But in when lactobacilli are present along with Pseudomonas, they're able to really stop the problem.
Exactly. And we are seeing similar things in most of our chronic lung diseases.
Okay.
Yeah. So not only does resB decrease the inflammatory markers, but we are seeing improvement in the lung structures of these mice also. So again, I'm not going to claim anything here, but these mean linear intercepts are markers of lung structure. Okay. And when we give resB with the injury, the lung structure dramatically improves. And there's a lot of other data on how neutrophils are controlled, how MMP9 protein and mRNA are reduced in mice on administration of resB. But more importantly, look at inflammatory markers, right? The generalized inflammatory markers, which FDA looks at, which NIH looks at, which everyone looks at, like CRP. On resB administration, we found a decrease in CRP, that is C-reactive protein, both systemically and in the lungs. So we thought this was very interesting. So what this tells me is it's not only a very specific lung inflammation reduction, but in addition to that, there is systemic inflammation reduction also. And that's why we are seeing our gut benefits and our immune benefits with this formulation. Clinical studies, there's several clinical studies on strains. I'm not going to get into the details of it, but I'm happy to provide the references for your audience on what studies have been conducted. And we just concluded a safety study in healthy patients and asthma patients in Ireland, which found no adverse effect. Again, we'll release the data here soon, but it was a very successful study we just concluded, and there are several other studies ongoing.
Yeah, we just had a discussion with a PhD student from Cork about bacteriophages, which are also being applied to lung health. Probably a safer bet than antibiotics, and just very interesting stuff.
It's extremely interesting. Like a group in Yale, Dr. John Koff's group in Yale was studying bacteriophages and cystic fibrosis, and we used to discuss a lot about the role, and it is fascinating how bacteriophages could have similar effects as good bacteria. Yeah. Right. So there's so much we don't know. That's what I keep telling everyone. There's so much we don't know, not only about the microbiome, or the bacteria, but also about interkingdom interactions. How do these bacteria interact with viruses? How do these viruses interact with fungi? And how do they all interact together? And then these bacteriophages, etc. How do they create a milieu of microbiome which affects various organs?
Oh yeah, in fact, in the infant microbiome, my understanding is that phages outnumber bacteria early on. So these are protective viruses, basically.
These are protective viruses, and as you said, people are studying it in cystic fibrosis and other diseases, and soon, I think we'll see them in prime time.
Yeah, fantastic. Cystic fibrosis, I've seen some research about the gut microbiome being dominant in actinobacteria, which is not normal. So, what you're doing is really opening a window toward prevention and treatment and all through balanced gut microbes. And where lactobacilli, has a major impact. I liked seeing L. plantarum as part of the formula. This is, in my understanding, dominant in fermented vegetables like sauerkraut. Not your particular strain that you're using, but as a society, we're not eating fermented vegetables anymore like our ancestors did. The idea is not to think that these things are, actually colonizing, but when you're constantly shoveling in these bacteria, they have transient but impactful, results on our health. It's like a form. Go ahead.
Talking about fermentation, I just recently read a study about kimchi, of how Korean kimchi, which is basically fermented cabbage, etc., have great health benefits. So absolutely, traditional medicine utilized a lot of fermented food in various cultures, which is coming a full circle now. They
actually found to treat and prevent MERS, the MERS virus.
Yes.
And this is 2015 research. Something along the lines of raising IgA, which then raises IgG. I have to review that. We have a video up about it on the Gut Club Facebook page. But short of ferment, about kimchi in particular, the news report as treatment for MERS virus, which is a coronavirus, of course. So the idea is these bacteria might also help to prevent other viral diseases.
Yeah, so and we were so impressed by the gut-lung benefits of our formulation that we wanted to try it as a therapeutic model in therapeutic. So we floated a company called Alveolus Bio to commercialize FDA-approved drugs for lung diseases. Inhalation or direct inoculation of any lung disease treatment has far more benefits, direct benefits to the lungs compared to any other, mode of administration.
Yes. Yes.
Direct absorption, direct, administration to the mucosa of the lungs. Moreover, bypassing the metabolism through the liver, etc. So it prevents toxicity also. So we went ahead and created an inhaled live biotherapeutic through the company Alveolus Bio.
Yeah, that's just astounding. That's what I had the hunch existed, and how I found you. Actually, you found me, but I found you first. But so, at first I was thinking kefir whey is high in lactoferrin, which has some synergy with lactobacillus. There's research about the vaginal microbiome, and this is tough stuff for me to grasp. I need to review it more closely, but there is some pretty intense synergy between lactobacillus and lactoferrin. And I thought that kefir whey might be something which could be nebulized. But you're, putting a lot more science into it, of course. So tell us about alveolus and or do you pronounce it alveolus?
Yeah, so for the audience, alveoli are the smallest building blocks of the lungs. That's where the gas exchange actually happens in the lungs, and that's how our bodies get oxygen. So we thought we were creating a platform company. Well, we created a platform respiratory drug development company, and what better name than the building blocks of the lung, which are alveoli. So Alveolus Bio is a platform respiratory drug development company creating first of its kind inhaled live biotherapeutics for pulmonary diseases. So we have 4 active programs. One is a severe COPD program, which is actually now in front of the FDA for review. We have lung injury secondary to viral illness program, where we are studying influenza, and then we have planned to study coronaviruses also. We have a plan to, we have a program for bronchopulmonary dysplasia for preterm infants, because that's where we started identifying the role of this bacteria mix. And neutrophilic asthma is a 4th program. Our 5th program is pulmonary hypertension, and the 6th program is pulmonary fibrosis, which are not mentioned here. So it's a platform company working on several drug development programs based on the concept ResMed, which is a respiratory microbiota-based inhaled therapeutics, where we have created first-in-class inhaled microbiome-based biotherapeutics, which target neutrophilic inflammation. So it was a long process. It took us, I think, 4 or 5 years to do the science, but last couple of years, 2 or 2.5 years to create the proprietary engineered dry powdered particles, which have these live bacteria without basically killing these bacteria. So we partnered with a company which had developed our initial inhaled insulins, and came up with this technology where we can now inhale live bacteria.
What is protecting? Yeah. What protects the bacteria from dying?
So it's a mix of what kind of excipients you use, and that is the intellectual property there of how you create those dry proprietary particles. Temperature has to be right, pressure has to be right, the excipients have to be right. There are a lot of things. Not only you have to keep them alive, but you have to create a particle size which is small enough which can go into the distal lungs. So, so we created something which would go into distal lungs. So, again, I don't want to overwhelm everyone with a lot of data, but we have a lot of data on. We call our first drug product AB1000, and AB1000, we have a lot of preclinical data now assimilated on the efficacy, and it's amazing. Yeah, first time we saw these slides of these mice which had COPD and got treated with this, we thought someone had switched the slides. It was dramatic.
Wow.
The differences were dramatic. Yeah, so that's Alveolus Bio, which is a drug development company where we are going through the FDA process to develop the first inhaled live biotherapeutics.
What's the timeline on this for people to be able to use it?
I think we have to enter clinical trials first. I'm hoping my first clinical trial, first in humans, would be within the next 1 year.
Yeah, within the year. Okay.
In 1 year, next 1 year, because we are waiting for a response from the FDA, and we'll go from there. Yeah.
Okay, fantastic. Yeah, this is a lot to bite off and chew. Let me share a screen myself and run through a couple things, and then we'll wrap this up. There's just so much to talk about. This is the photo on the Gut Club page on Facebook where they were comparing antibiotics and probiotics, and both actually worked. But of course, the antibiotic approach, I like to say, Dr. Lal, that you can't kill your way to good health. You have to add life. So in fact, that's one of my favorite mottos of the Gut Club. But it's always interesting to see that if antibiotics worked, that probiotics also worked to regulate the immune system between the gut and the lungs. This is the paper about the mesenteric lymphatics and as a connection between the gut-lung axis. That I was very happy to see this out of my home state of Florida. This was a paper called Lung-Liver Interactions in Acute Respiratory Distress Syndrome, ARDS, where you can see the connection between the gut, liver, and lungs. This is some press from February 24th of this year about how the flora of the gut can regulate the brain's immune reactivity. Just astounding. Here's the actual paper. The lung microbiome regulates brain autoimmunity. This was the paper about bacteriophages being nebulized, which, by the way, with your ancestry, which is from India, correct?
Yes.
We have a photo about the River Ganges where I keep a tally of bacteriophage research and also information about customized bacteriophage therapy in a couple of places in the world. And I was just thrilled to learn several years ago that the River Ganges, is a medicinal holy place. And there's some biological credence being phages in that river where the snow is melting up in the mountains as the origin of the river. And this may actually help to balance flora when people are entering the River Ganges.
It is possible. Traditionally, Ganges water has been considered medicinal in India. But again, now people are trying to find the science behind it, which is amazing.
Yeah, well, amazing. You might be able to combine in a future product phages and probiotics. In fact, that's what's being done now with the gut. Most of the products on the shelves are the same cocktail of phages combined with probiotics. Anyway, just a thought. This is a 2010 article about Lactobacillus applied to pneumonia, probiotic prophylactic. I'm not sure if this is anything about direct application to the lungs. This may be oral use back in 2010.
Yeah, so no one has done it directly in the lungs in patients, I think. Gut-lung axis, also we have the first product on the shelves right now. But I know that people have started taking note and people are starting to work on it, yeah.
Yeah.
Which just advances the field, so we're happy about it.
Yeah. Here was a paper that I discovered about intranasal Bifidobacterium longum. B. longum is, of course, a very important part of what breastfeeding, what breast milk is prebiotic for. This was about, lung injury and due to influenza. So maybe in the future, ResBiotic can include Bifidobacteria.
And as you say that, so we have 3 more products coming out of ResBiotic in the next several months.
Mm-hmm.
At least 2 of them have more than one Bifidobacterium strain.
Oh, fantastic! Yeah, it's just very exciting. We live in exciting times, don't we? This is really the age of being connected with the web of life for a change. That's how I like to view this. Here's your website, the Alveolus website for people to visit, and the ResBiotic website. Here's the listing of the strains again, like your slide. Here is where I discovered your work at the University of Alabama at Birmingham inhaled respiratory probiotics for lung diseases of infancy, childhood, and adulthood. I don't think it gets much more profound. This was the lung cancer study from 2018. Probiotic, this is aerosol therapy, actually. And these authors are from Italy. Do you work with this group?
I don't, but I know about them, yes.
Yeah.
It's a small world of people who are interested in, live biotherapeutics for lung diseases. So we keep track of each other.
Yeah, they're talking about lung disease and lung cancer, decreasing tumors by way of both aerosolized delivery of antibiotics or probiotics. This is that first photo, actually. This is where this photo comes from. And lastly, this was something that was just published on Gut Microbiota for Health website. This is a European group where they're talking all about the gut-lung connection and as far as treatment for COVID. And it's basically like a review article where they're citing several different pieces of research. So with that, Dr. Lal, I want to thank you very much for being part of the Gut Club today. And I hope we'll continue the conversation. Am I missing anything? Is there something you wanted to say in closing?
I think it's been a pleasure. I actually follow Gut Club myself. That's how I saw that you were posting about our studies, and it's a great thing you guys are doing. I'm pretty glad to be a part of this, and hopefully we can collaborate in the future too.
We intend to do that. I just learned that you do have a program where we can help to market ResBiotic, and we'd be proud to do that.
Yeah, and I actually, it is a science-backed product which we want to, create the awareness about. I think it's a great platform where our affiliate program could work. So, we'll be in touch about that. Yes.
We'll be very proud to be part of your work and spread the word. So, okay, everyone, this is Keith Bell from the Gut Club and Dr. Vivek Lal signing out for the day. Everyone have a safe rest of your week, and we will be in touch. See you in cyberspace.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you, Dr. Lal. Bye-bye now.